Your brain quit on money months ago and you never noticed, because a defeated brain doesn't send a memo when it surrenders. Most people watching this still believe they are actively trying to manifest money. They are not. Somewhere in the last few months, sometimes the last few years, their brain quietly stopped trying, resigned and settled into a truce with lack, while the conscious mind kept talking about goals and vision boards like nothing had changed underneath. The subconscious doesn't announce surrender. It doesn't send a memo. It just shifts its behavior in small, deniable ways, and those small ways are exactly what we're going through today. 7 signs. By the 4th one, most people in this audience are going to feel something uncomfortable, because the 4th sign is the one almost nobody catches in themselves, and it's the one doing the most damage. Neville Goddard was clear that the subconscious always acts on the assumption currently held, whether you consciously chose that assumption or simply inherited it through repetition and defeat. These 7 signs are how a defeated assumption leaks out into daily behavior long before you'd ever admit it out loud. None of these 7 signs show up in someone whose subconscious is still actively expecting money, and none of them show up in the people you've noticed seem to attract opportunity without visibly struggling for it. That's not coincidence. Behavior always leaks the assumption underneath it, whether the assumption was chosen deliberately or simply absorbed through years of disappointment. A polygraph doesn't measure a lie directly. It measures the small, involuntary signals a body produces around a lie, sweat, pulse, breath. These 7 signs work the same way around a very different internal state. They're the involuntary signals a defeated assumption produces in daily behavior, long before you'd ever say out loud, "I've given up." Watch for these in yourself over the next few minutes, not with judgment, just with the same clinical distance you'd use reading a set of test results. Some of these are going to be obvious, some of them are going to be uncomfortably specific. There's also a rough order to how these 7 tend to arrive, and recognizing where you are in that order tells you almost as much as recognizing the signs themselves. It usually starts quietly with sign 3, the flicker of dread before opportunity, because that one requires the least conscious admission. It feels like caution, not defeat. From there it spreads into sign 1, the price tag numbness, because avoidance is easier to maintain once dread has already primed you to expect disappointment from financial situations generally. Sign 2 tends to follow once the identity needs an outlet, a socially acceptable way to express what's underneath without calling it what it is, which is where the jokes come in. Sign 5 arrives once you need a way to explain the pattern to yourself in language that sounds like wisdom, instead of surrender. Sign 4 is usually one of the last to fully set in, because it requires other people's struggle to matter to you in a specific way, which takes time to develop. And by the time it shows up, the identity has become social, not just personal. Sign 6 often overlaps with several of the earlier ones, quietly running in the background the entire time, visible only in hindsight when you actually add up where windfalls went. And sign 7, the vague dreams, is typically the last sign to fully arrive, because it requires the subconscious to have given up not just on the money itself, but on the specific wanting of it, which is a deeper resignation than simply expecting disappointment. Knowing this order matters because it tells you something about how long a particular sign has likely been running, and roughly how much repetition it's going to take to reverse. If you only recognize sign 3, dread before opportunity, you caught this relatively early, and the reversal is going to move faster than it would for someone who's already sitting with sign 7, vague, sanded-down dreams, which usually means years of accumulated evidence underneath it. Neither position is a life sentence. The mechanism reverses the same way regardless of how long it's been running. Deliberate, repeated, corrected assumption. It just takes proportionally more repetition the longer the old pattern has had to compound. Sign 1. You've stopped looking at price tags before you pick something up, and you've told yourself this is progress, that you're finally relaxed about money. Look closer. There's a difference between not looking because you're at peace and not looking because some part of you has already decided the number doesn't matter, since the outcome, more stress, more restriction, is assumed regardless. Real ease looks at the price and feels nothing charged either way. Resignation skips the price because some part of you has stopped believing your choice affects the outcome at all. Picture the actual moment. You're standing in a store, item in hand, and you catch yourself putting it in the cart without even a glance at the tag, then later feel a small, cold surprise at checkout. That surprise is the tell. Genuine abundance doesn't produce surprise at checkout, because some part of you was already tracking the total loosely and calmly the entire time. Numbness produces surprise because numbness isn't tracking anything. It's avoiding the entire category of information as a form of self-protection. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between calm confidence and numb defeat unless you check which one is actually driving the behavior, and most people never check, because both states feel identical from the inside in the moment, quiet, uninvolved, unbothered. The only real way to tell them apart is the checkout moment, the surprise or the absence of it. Neville would have called this a state you've come to live in without noticing you ever assumed it, an identity running quietly in the background of 100 small decisions a day, none of them dramatic enough on their own to notice, all of them adding up to a single, consistent assumption about what money does and doesn't do around you. Sign 2. You joke about being broke more than you used to, and the jokes get bigger laughs than they used to. Humor is one of the most efficient camouflages the subconscious has for genuine surrender, because it lets real despair travel through a group as entertainment instead of confession. Notice the specific pattern. Someone mentions a purchase, and almost automatically you're already reaching for the line, "Can't relate, haven't seen my account this month," and the table laughs, and for a second, it feels good, connected, funny, harmless. It isn't harmless. Every time you make that joke and the room laughs, your nervous system logs a small hit of social reward for performing the identity of someone who has given up trying, which reinforces exactly the identity you're supposedly trying to leave behind. You're not just describing a state anymore, you're being paid, in laughter and belonging, to keep performing it. This is worse than a private complaint, because a private complaint fades once you're alone with your own thoughts again. A performed one gets rehearsed out loud, refined for delivery, timed for maximum laughs, which means you're actively practicing the scarcity identity the same way an actor rehearses a role until it fits better than the one you're trying to install instead. The joke isn't harmless. It's rehearsal, delivered in a format that feels too light-hearted to challenge, which is exactly why it does more damage than a direct, serious statement of the same belief ever would. Sign 3. New opportunities produce a flicker of dread in your chest before they produce any excitement, if they produce excitement at all. Notice it the next time an unknown number calls or an email lands with a subject line that could be good news or bad news. Watch the very first half-second before your thinking mind has even identified what the message actually is. A subconscious still actively expecting good news feels a lift, however small, when a door opens, a kind of forward lean toward the message. A subconscious that has quietly quit feels the dread first, a tightening, a bracing, a kind of preloaded expectation that this too will fall apart or come with a catch or turn out to be more trouble than it's worth. That flicker is not intuition, and it is not caution either, no matter how reasonable it feels in the moment. It's your prediction engine running its most recent, most heavily weighted pattern, which is failure, and generating the emotional forecast that matches it before your conscious mind even finishes reading the message. Neville taught that feeling always precedes fact, that the emotional tone you carry into a moment is the actual instruction being issued, not just a reaction to it. Which means that flinch, repeated enough times across enough opportunities, isn't just describing your current state, it's actively producing the next one, priming you to approach the opportunity half-braced for disappointment before you've even opened it, in ways that quietly manufacture the very outcome you were dreading. Here's sign 4, and I want you to actually sit with this one instead of rushing past it, because it's the sign that does the most quiet damage of all 7, and almost nobody admits it, even to themselves. Picture the actual scene. A coworker, a friend, a family member says something like, "Nobody can afford anything anymore. It's impossible out here." And you feel it. That small, warm rush of agreement. Maybe you even add your own example on top of theirs, building the case together. That rush is not empathy, it's relief, and relief in that specific moment is diagnostic. Your subconscious, having quietly quit on the goal, now needs company in the identity of struggle, because shared failure feels safer than isolated effort. Isolated effort means the outcome is on you. Shared failure means the outcome is on the economy, the system, the times, everyone, which is a far more comfortable place for a defeated assumption to rest. If everyone is struggling, your own lack of progress stops being a personal signal and becomes a shared condition. External, unfair, nobody's fault. This is the worst sign on this list, because it means part of you now has a vested interest in things staying the same. Not just for you, but for the people around you too, since your comfort depends on struggle being normal rather than optional. It's why some people, without ever consciously deciding to, get a little quieter, a little colder, when someone close to them starts to genuinely succeed. Watch how you feel the next time someone near you succeeds quickly, easily, without the struggle story you've come to expect. If there's a flash of something bitter before you catch yourself, that's the same mechanism, just facing the other direction, and it's worth noticing without punishing yourself for it, because noticing it is the only way it ever loses its grip. Sign 5. You've started calling it realistic when it's actually resignation wearing a more respectable coat. Listen to yourself the next time you explain why you're not pursuing something. A raise, a new client, a bigger ask. If the sentence starts with, "I'm just being realistic," pause before you finish it. "I'm just being realistic about my situation," sounds like maturity. It's often just surrender that learned a better vocabulary. Realism in the mouth of a subconscious that's still engaged, still expecting, sounds like strategy, next steps, adjustments, a plan for how to get from here to there. Realism in the mouth of a subconscious that's quit sounds like a closing argument, a case being made for why nothing more should be expected, delivered with just enough logic to avoid being questioned by the people around you or by yourself. The tell isn't the word realistic itself, the tell is what comes after it. Strategy opens a door, resignation closes one and calls the closing wise. Picture the actual conversation. A friend suggests you ask for a raise, or pitch a new client, or try for something slightly out of reach, and the sentence that comes out is, "I'm just being realistic. That's not really how it works for someone like me." Notice how quickly the sentence closes the conversation instead of opening a next step. Genuine realism, the kind actually rooted in strategy, tends to produce a follow-up question. What would it take? Who else has done this? What's the actual data? Resignation dressed as realism tends to produce silence, a closed door, a change of subject, because there was never a real evaluation happening underneath the word, just a socially acceptable way to end the conversation before hope got a chance to complicate things. If you recognized even 2 of these so far, drop a number in the comments, 1 through 7, for how many of these you're catching in yourself right now. I read every one, and it tells me exactly where to aim the next video. That's 5 signs down, and if any of them landed, sit with the discomfort instead of rushing past it, because discomfort here is useful information, not something to manage away. In the next part, we go through the final 2 signs, including the one most people never notice about their own dreams, and then we go through exactly how to reverse every single one of these before your subconscious has years more evidence to work with. Sign 6. Small windfalls disappear almost as fast as they arrive. An unexpected refund, a bit of overtime, a small gift, gone within days on something forgettable, a night out, a gadget, a handful of small purchases you can't even list a week later, while larger planned expenses somehow always find a way to consume anything bigger that shows up. This isn't bad luck and it isn't poor math. It's a nervous system correcting an anomaly back to its expected baseline, the same basic mechanism your body uses to run a fever back down. Your subconscious has a number it currently assumes as normal, and any amount that pushes meaningfully above that number gets treated the same way a body treats a temperature spike, something to bring back down to the expected set point as quickly as possible, usually through decisions that feel completely ordinary and justified in the moment, never through a single dramatic act of self-sabotage you could easily catch. This is why so many people can point to multiple moments of unexpected money entering their life over the years. A bonus, an inheritance, a settlement, a lucky break, and still be in the exact same financial position now, sometimes years later. The amount changed temporarily. The set point, the actual assumption running underneath, never did, so the money found its way back out through 100 small, reasonable-seeming choices until the account matched the identity again. Sign 7, the last one, and it's the quietest of all. You no longer dream in specifics about money. Ask yourself honestly what your goal even is right now, in detail. If the honest answer is something vague like enough to get by, or less stress or just some breathing room, notice what's missing. A number, a scene, a specific life this money would actually produce. Think back if you can to a much earlier version of yourself years ago, and the specific thing you once wanted, almost embarrassingly precise. A particular house on a particular kind of street, a particular car in a particular color, a particular moment of walking into a particular room and watching a particular person's face change. Somewhere along the way, for a subconscious that's quit, those specifics get sanded down into vague, modest, safe language, because specific dreams are vulnerable to specific disappointment, while vague ones can never quite be proven false. You can't fail at just some breathing room the way you can fail at a specific number by a specific date, and that safety is exactly the problem. This is the subconscious protecting itself from further defeat by refusing to generate anything sharp enough to hurt when it doesn't arrive. It feels like humility, like you've simply grown wiser and less materialistic. It's actually surrender wearing humility as a disguise, and it's often the last sign to appear, because by the time dreams themselves have gone vague, the subconscious isn't just avoiding disappointment anymore, it's avoided hope altogether. You don't need all 7 present to be dealing with a subconscious that's quit on money specifically. Some of you only recognized 1 or 2 of these, and that's actually normal, because resignation rarely spreads evenly across every part of a life at once. You can have a subconscious that's fully expectant in your career, your relationships, even your health, and still be quietly defeated specifically around money, because each domain gets its own accumulated evidence, its own set point, its own history of disappointment. 1 or 2 signs recognized honestly is still real data. It just means the defeat is contained to a smaller territory than it could be, which, if anything, makes it easier to reverse, because you're not fighting a defeated assumption running through every part of your life, just one specific, well-defined pocket of it. And here's the part that's going to frustrate anyone hoping the answer is simply to work harder. Working harder doesn't touch a single one of these 7 signs, because none of them are caused by insufficient effort. You can work 2 jobs and still feel dread before opening an email. You can grind for years and still joke about being broke at every gathering. You can hustle constantly and still watch windfalls vanish within days, because effort operates in the 3D, in the world of actions and hours and output, while these 7 signs live one level underneath that, in the assumption directing what all that effort is even allowed to produce. Effort aimed by a defeated assumption just produces a more exhausted version of the exact same 7 signs, working twice as hard to arrive at the identical checkout surprise, the identical joke, the identical vanished windfall. This is precisely why so many genuinely hard-working people stay stuck for years, while people working noticeably less seem to move forward without visible strain. The difference was never the hours. It was which of these 7 signs was quietly running underneath the hours the entire time. There's one more reason sign 4 matters more than the other 6, beyond simply being the one nobody admits to. It's the sign that actively recruits other people into maintaining the other 6 for you. Once shared struggle has become a source of comfort, the people around you become, without anyone intending it, quiet enforcers of the old identity. The friend who reliably complains about money with you is unconsciously reinforcing your price tag numbness every time you nod along. The family member who always frames a new opportunity as too risky is reinforcing your dread before opportunity every time you take their caution as fact instead of as their own 7 signs talking. This is why reversing sign 4 first, or at least alongside whichever sign you identified as your own tightest, tends to make the other reversals move faster than tackling them in isolation. It's not that the other 6 become easy, it's that they stop being quietly reinstalled by the exact people you're spending the most time around. Now here's what to do about all 7, because naming the pattern without reversing it just leaves you more aware of a problem you haven't touched yet. Every one of these signs comes from the same root, an assumption of defeat currently running the show underneath your conscious goals. And every one of them reverses through the same mechanism, deliberately assuming and repeatedly experiencing in imagination the specific opposite state, until the nervous system logs enough new evidence to overrule the old pattern. For the price tag numbness, the reversal isn't forcing yourself to feel anxious about spending again. That's not progress either. It's deliberately noticing a price, feeling a brief, specific scene of that amount being genuinely irrelevant to you, not because you've gone numb, but because you have more than enough, and letting that specific felt sense register before you move on. Do this the next 3 times you're actually holding something with a price attached, on purpose, as a small deliberate drill rather than something you wait to feel like doing. Small, repeated, specific, always beats one large emotional effort you only attempt once. For the broke jokes, the reversal is simply refusing to perform the identity for laughs anymore, not with a dramatic announcement, just quietly declining to deliver that particular joke next time it's sitting right there. Tempting, easy, guaranteed to land. Let the moment pass without the punchline. If the silence feels uncomfortable, let it. That discomfort is the old identity noticing it isn't getting fed. Nobody else in the room will notice the joke that didn't happen. Your own nervous system absolutely will. For the dread that shows up before opportunity, meet new information with a deliberately paused breath before reacting at all, long enough to notice the dread arriving as a stored pattern rather than a fact about what's about to happen, and then consciously generate the alternative, a brief specific scene of this particular opportunity working out cleanly before you let yourself respond to the actual message or call. Over weeks, this single pause repeated starts to change which forecast your nervous system reaches for first. For sign 4, the validation in other people's struggle, this one needs the most honesty of all 7. The next time someone's complaint about money gives you that small flash of relief, catch it, name it silently for exactly what it is, and instead of joining in, redirect your own internal state toward a specific scene of your own situation already resolved. You don't need to correct them or lecture them or argue. You just need to stop using their struggle as quiet evidence for your own ceiling, which is all that reflexive agreement has ever really been doing. For calling resignation realistic, the reversal is asking yourself one honest question every time the word realistic shows up in your own mouth. Realistic according to which evidence, the old identities or the one you're trying to install. If the sentence is protecting you from disappointment rather than genuinely informing a next step, it's the old identity talking in a more respectable voice, and it's allowed to be noticed without being obeyed. For windfalls disappearing, the reversal is deliberately raising the set point itself through repeated imaginal scenes at a higher baseline, not spending fantasies, identity scenes, the specific felt sense of a larger number being the new normal, calm, unremarkable, boring even, experienced repeatedly until your nervous system stops correcting money back down to the old line. The goal isn't excitement about the new number. Excitement is still a charged reaction. The goal is boredom, the specific feeling of a number that no longer needs defending or celebrating, simply expected. And for the vague dreams, the reversal is forcing specificity back into the picture, on purpose even if it feels uncomfortable or embarrassingly precise at first. A number, a place, a particular reaction from a particular person in a particular room. Vague dreams can't be assumed as fulfilled because there's no scene to occupy. Specific ones can, which is exactly why the subconscious avoided them in the first place, and exactly why you're going to force them back in writing if you need to, until the specific version feels more natural to think in than the safe, vague one ever did. Beyond reversing each sign individually in the moment it shows up, there's one practice that works on all 7 at once, and it takes place at the exact same time each day, right before sleep, when your logical, argumentative mind is naturally at its weakest and least defended. Before you fall asleep tonight, briefly scan back through the day and notice which of these 7 signs actually fired, honestly, without judging yourself for it. Maybe it was the price tag numbness at the store this afternoon. Maybe it was the flicker of dread when a text came in. Maybe, if you're being fully honest, it was the small relief you felt when a coworker complained about money and you quietly agreed. Once you've noticed it, don't just note it and move on. Briefly replay that exact moment, but corrected, the way it would have gone if the new identity had been running the show instead of the old one. Feel the checkout total land with no charge at all. Feel the phone ring and notice a lift instead of a brace. Feel yourself hearing the complaint and simply not needing to join it. Calm, unmoved, quietly certain your own situation is nothing like the one being described. This isn't pretending the day went differently. It's choosing which version of the day actually gets filed away as evidence for tomorrow, since your nervous system consolidates the day's experience during exactly this window, right before sleep, and it is not particularly picky about whether the scene it's filing was lived exactly as described or corrected moments before you drifted off. Do this every night, even on nights where only one sign showed up, even on nights where it feels repetitive or unnecessary. The old identity took years of nightly, unremarkable repetition to install, without anyone deliberately choosing it. The new one gets installed the same way, except this time you're the one choosing what gets repeated, which is the entire difference between an identity that happened to you and one you deliberately assumed. Notice too what the person who's already made this shift actually looks like, because it's rarely dramatic. It isn't someone loudly declaring their wealth or performing confidence for an audience. It's someone who looks at a price and feels nothing either way, who doesn't reach for the broke joke because there's genuinely nothing there to perform anymore, who feels a small, quiet lift instead of dread when the phone rings with an unknown number, who stays quiet or even a little uncomfortable when a room fills with complaints about money, not from superiority, just from no longer having anything in common with that particular performance, who still has a specific number and a specific scene in mind, held loosely without anxiety. The way you'd hold a plan you're fully confident is already in motion. None of this requires more effort than what you're already spending maintaining the 7 signs. It requires spending that same attention in the opposite direction, deliberately, starting today. Because none of that is loud. It's usually other people who clock it first in ways they can't quite explain, long before you'd trust it yourself. Not from anything you've said, from what's gone quiet, the joke that used to be automatic, the complaint you used to add to. They'll just say you seem different lately, calmer, harder to rattle, without being able to name what specifically changed. None of this requires an announcement. It shows up exactly the way the 7 signs did in the first place, in small, deniable behavior, just running in the opposite direction now. One more thing before we close, and it's worth sitting with for a second. If you're still watching this, all the way to this exact sentence, on a video with a title that basically accused your subconscious of quitting on you, that itself is data. A fully defeated subconscious, one that's truly given up completely, doesn't stay for this. It clicks away the moment the content stops being comfortable, because comfort is the entire point of resignation. The fact that you stayed, that some part of you wanted the uncomfortable list read in full, means the assumption underneath isn't as finished as sign 7 might have made it feel a few minutes ago. Something in you is still expecting enough to sit through a video describing exactly how you've been quietly giving up. Treat that as the actual starting point, not the 7 signs themselves. Force every one of these reversals on repeat, the same way the original 7 signs got installed through years of unforced repetition. Dictate the new pattern instead of waiting to feel like it's true first. Destroy the polite language, realistic, humble, easygoing, that's been quietly protecting resignation from being noticed. Starve the small social rewards, the laughs, the shared complaints, the relief in someone else's bad news that have been feeding the old identity daily without your permission. So, brainwash is not too dramatic a word for what nightly, deliberate, corrected repetition does to a nervous system that spent years absorbing the opposite by accident without anyone directing it on purpose. None of this requires waiting for a single dollar to change first. It requires noticing which of these 7 signs is running today and deliberately assuming its opposite before the day is finished. Today is the actual test, not some future day when conditions feel more convenient. The next price tag you see, the next joke sitting right there waiting to be delivered, the next complaint someone else brings you, the next unknown number that calls, each one is a small immediate chance to run the new pattern instead of the old one. Right now, not after you feel more ready, not after the numbers already prove it's safe to. Ready is a feeling the old identity was always going to withhold indefinitely, since readiness in its language only ever arrives after proof, and proof was never going to arrive first. Comment which sign hit hardest, 1 through 7, and tell me honestly if it was the 4th one, because that's the one that quietly wrecks the most people watching this without them ever naming it out loud.